found in, okay,
Start over.
native alternatives for exotic plants typically found in South Georgia garden centers. So that means I'm not going to be talking about things like kudzu or uh, that sort of thing that has already been established. That's not a good plant to have, and they're not going to sell it. We're just looking at what's for sale, really. Now, I said that, of course, I like to dig in the dirt, and I've learned a lot over the past 3 years. And I mentioned 3 years because it was 3 years ago that I did a plant this, not that presentation for a conference. And boy, I have learned a lot since then. And I've learned that there's still a lot to learn. You'll notice in this slide that plant this, not that. Over here is the Bradford pear, the calorie pear that they said was sterile, but it wasn't. It's growing all over the place. So instead of planting a Bradford pear, you come over here and look at this serviceberry, and you can plant that instead. So that's why we're saying what do we plant instead of an exotic? All right. So this is what we're going to be doing. Why do we care about restoring natural habitats, and what can we do as individuals? What am I doing myself? There is, it's my native plant journey. Um, I'll tell you a little bit about that and why native plants are important. Then you're going to have an assignment. Sorry about that. And because I learned when I was doing all of this research that that was the best thing for anybody to do, is to do their own, plant this, not that. And I'll explain some more about that. Do your own research. And then I'll show you a little bit about what I've done, and we'll talk about what you can do. All right. Oh, by the way, I'll tell you a little bit about this picture right here. Do you see the birds in the picture? And the baby birds in this nest. Taken this photo. I took this photo at Fullwood Park. We had put in a pollinator garden around the dog park, and this was the native wisteria that was growing up on the fence. Well, there's no place for the birds to nest anymore because the city cut it all down. It was something about it was they wanted it to be more open. They were afraid that it was people would be able to hide behind it. Anyway, so now there's no more places for these birds to nest on the fence. They'll have to find someplace else to nest. All right. So why should I be concerned about non-native plants? Didn't used to be too concerned about it, but I want y'all to think about what you would underline if you were taking notes. So ornamentals planted in my yard shouldn't be a problem for anyone else, should they? Um, and that's the attitude that a lot of people take, that it's my yard, I can plant what I want. So let's take a look at these things that I've paraphrased here and pick out some important words. Non-native or exotic plants offer very little support to our native wildlife. So what would you underline there? So little support, yeah. They can be invasive and outcompete native plants for water, nutrients, and sunlight. What would you underline? I would underline outcompete. All right, they often form dense monocultures that keep native seedlings from growing. They alter soil, water, and nutrient conditions affecting native plants. Now, this is a biggie for me, and the only word I underlined there was alter. That's something that I've learned about, like the tallow tree, the Chinese tallow. Um, their seeds scatter far and wide. That's what seeds do. Their roots travel and are difficult to remove. Their impact on our local habitats are not realized for years, and then the damage is done. And that's another thing that we have to think about. The Bradford pear was supposed to be sterile. and it was put in, and nobody thought that it would be a problem. But 20 years, 30 years later, it is a problem. Um, so think Bradford pear there. And then they're often difficult to remove once established. Think crepe myrtles. And the story that I would tell you about crepe myrtles is my neighbor had 7 very large crepe myrtles in her front yard. And they were getting tired of all the mess, on the cars and stuff. And she was looking at my yard where I was putting in natives, and she ripped those suckers out, or she hired somebody to rip them out. They are seeking revenge. They are coming back. You got to get those roots. You got to get all those roots. And once she got all the roots in her yard, they're springing up in my yard. So that's another thing to think about. Certainly, there are native plants that can be aggressive, and we'll talk about that too. But let's think about native plants being the foundation for our ecosystems that are vital to our insects, and we need our insects. Our insects are pollinators, and we like to eat, so we want our food pollinated. We want the fruit pollinated. When we know better, we do better. And in my opinion, native plants are better. All right. All right, this is how I got started on it. I joined the Garden Club, and I joined the Native Plant Society at about the same time, right after I retired. Um, and since I was in the Native Plant Society, that was my job in the Magnolia Garden Club, was to keep everybody abreast as to what was going on in the native plant world. And we had an event in Tifton, and one of the things that they had to display was an educational table. So I'll tell you that the theme for this event was Some Like It Hot. So I came up with what's hot. There's Marilyn Monroe, and she's hot. And what's not, with Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis, and they weren't hot. And that was my plant this, not that. So that was my first stab at educating people about replacing non-native invasives. And then a year and a half or so later, the same garden club said, okay, we've got to enter something in the Perry Fair, something educational. And as it turns out, the theme for the event there at the Perry Fair, or I think for the whole garden club of Georgia for that year, was Plant America for the next 100 years. And they had specifically listed a focus on community, native plants, and sustainable gardening. So I came up with a tri-board that says plant this, not that, plant America, plant native, and the green light is go and the red light is stop. So that was and I won a prize. I got second place. Did I tell you why? The judges said that I didn't have handouts for people to carry. And what I had right here was this thing that Mary Alice and I had done. And they could have taken a picture of it, but they expected to be able to pick it up. And I thought, well, that's going to be too expensive for them just for the participants, the visitors to, just drop on the floor. Anyway, I should have gotten first place. That's why I didn't get first place. I didn't have handouts. All right, we'll go to the next one then. Oh, and speaking of the handout, Mary Alice and I put this together. You can find this brochure at CPC GNPS, just like that, under the brochures. And it does need some updating, but it can still be a very useful tool. And like I've said and will say again, it's not that easy. It's not like there's one native plant that will perfectly take the place of this other native plant. So this other invasive plant. So trying to find the perfect replacement that's native for something that isn't native is difficult. I know I've been trying. Anyway, but a lot of these that's listed here are still very good, and we're going to replace, some of them. We'll change some of them. There's more than one thing that can be plugged in. All right, so this is my plant this not that journey. We were camping down in Florida, and walking the trail, and at the end of the trail over here, you'll see this. It was a pollinator garden, and this sign that said plant this not that. Well, that's what I was working on at the time, and I was so excited to see that the Florida State Parks had a plant this not that, so that the native plants were better than these exotic plants. And they gave some suggestions here. So plant a passion vine instead of the coral vine. Plant sunshine mimosa instead of the Wedelia. But recently, I came across this book. And this is when I was looking up, doing some research for this presentation. I came across this book, and Elise Howard is the author. She's in Maryland. We do share a lot of the same plants, but she was being interviewed, and she said that she's got this book. Oh, y'all need to look at it. Elise Howard, Plant This Not That. I ordered it. It was pre-ordered, and I will be getting it March the 3rd. I can't wait to get that one. So what I'm saying here is that 3 years ago, there weren't that many. It wasn't such a big deal, but it is now. Everybody seems to be jumping on the plant this, not that, and I'm seeing more and more evidence of it. All right, so while I was doing all this research, I came across this little flip book. There's so much available now. I just got this from the University of Georgia. Plant This Not That, a guide to avoiding invasive plant species in Florida. And I know that we're Georgia, but we're sort of North Florida. And it's the neat little flip book that this is the invasive and this is what you can plant instead. And they may have, 6 or 8 different plants that they're suggesting. All right, let's go to this next one. Let me tell you, I'm sorry, we're going to have to do a little bit on terminology. My students here tonight know what all these words mean, but this is being recorded, so we're going to go over the terminology as well. But if you've got your pencil, I want you to underline, and I know you can't underline, but make a note of what you think is the most important. That's how I took notes in school, and that's how I encouraged my students to take notes, was to underline or highlight what was important. All right, native versus non-native. A native plant species is one that occurs naturally in a particular region, ecosystem, and or habitat, and was present prior to the European settlement. This is from Wild Ones. What's a couple of words that you would have underlined? I'll go ahead and tell you. I underlined naturally and prior. And when you say prior, I'm going to go with the date 1492. Non-native species or exotics. I'm seeing the word exotic used a lot more than non-native. These do not belong in a particular region, are often detrimental, not always, and take the place of beneficial natives, often outcompeting them for space. And I think the most important words there, and maybe you'll agree, is often detrimental. I mean, that's why we care, is that these non-natives are detrimental to the ecosystems. All right, we'll talk a little bit about aggressive versus invasive. Most people are using the word aggressive, and they mean the same thing, but they're using the word aggressive for native species, while they're using the word invasive for non-natives. So, for example, elderberry. Elderberry is native, but it's aggressive. I put it in my yard, and now I'm taking it out, and it's going to my son's little farm up the road. He wants and he needs all the elderberry that can grow on that place, but I don't need it in my yard. Now, invasive is going to be used for non-natives, um, mainly because it doesn't belong and it's taking over. Um, so just be mindful of those two words, aggressive and invasive. Most of the time, aggressive is for natives and invasive is for non-natives. Let's talk a minute about cultivars. Um, cultivars. Everything you find in a big box store is probably going to be some type of cultivar. So GNPS defines a cultivar, which is a cultivated variety or nativar. That's where they get the native plant in there, as a plant bred for a particular purpose, such as a desirable trait. They can have a place in the landscape, but should not be depended on to benefit native insects and birds. GNPS encourages people to ask for straight species plants in nurseries. So what's a couple of things that you would have underlined there? I'll tell you. I underlined bred for a particular purpose, and it could be all kinds of things. And then I also underlined straight species down here. So those would be the most important words in this paragraph. Bred for a particular purpose. Everything that I'm reading indicates that if a plant is being bred for its size, that's not so bad. If you can get these dwarf varieties, you can even get dwarf live oaks. That's not such a bad thing. But if the leaf color is changed, that can be bad. If the flower is a double flower instead of a single flower. And now I've found out that they're breeding plants to not have any pollen. But that doesn't do any pollinators any good. Anyway, all right. And more definitions, because I know you have to have definitions. Ecoregions. And this stuff is over my head. Y'all just bear with me. Defined by its environmental conditions, climate, landforms, and soils. I would have underlined environmental conditions. Ecoregions are reflected in the region's native plant communities and the ecosystem. So the community, which involves the soil type and the amount of sun and the rain and what's in the soil as far as nutrients. Ecotypes, that's another word that keeps coming up. This is a distinct form of a plant species occupying a particular habitat. And I underlined particular. All right, genotypes. This is the way I understand it, but I'll read it first. Plants of the same species may develop different genetic makeups due to their ability to adapt. Mixing plants of different genotypes could cause problems by introducing less well-adapted genes into the population. All right, so there's a particular type of blueberry, gosh, Vaccinium something another. And my sister's in Maine has got this blueberry, and we can grow that blueberry. It's native in Georgia. But I think that the one that is growing in Maine has adapted itself to a lot of rocks, because my sister's yard and that area of Maine, I mean, it's just, topsoil's about a foot deep, if that much. But the blueberries growing in Georgia and South Georgia are going to have a different kind of soil. And so they don't have to worry about, they don't have to worry about being adapted for rocks and that sort of thing. I hope you understood that. All right. And just because something is native in South Georgia or will grow in South Georgia doesn't mean it's going to grow in North Georgia. Let's go to the next slide. Here's the 3 decisions that I have found I've got to make when I'm choosing what plant to replace with something I'm taking out. And the first thing in my mind is the appearance, because I have a yard, and for example, across the front of the yard, I had Sunshine ligustrum. And I thought, well, I've got to take that out. Can I take what can I put in its place? And so I came up with the Florida anise. It had the same color, same kind of size, and that sort of thing. So I put that in there. Now it is native to the extreme South Georgia, so I didn't feel bad about putting in Florida anise. So location would be your second decision. Requirements. That Florida anise would probably like to have a little bit more shade than it's getting. So that was something that I should have thought about before I bought it and planted it. So those are the three things. This is going to be on your test: appearance, location, and requirements. And look at this neat little brochure that Amy put together. You can find it on our CPC GNPS website. Just go and take a look. You can find it, and you can print it out, or you can get one at some of the plant sales and events that we go to. We've always got them to hand out. And it will tell you what kind of soil, what kind of sun it needs, what kind of light. So soil and light and moisture. So those three things of the requirements. So you've got three things to make the decision and three things under requirements that I should have been thinking about too. All right. Resources. These online resources are helpful in finding alternatives to invasive exotics. I kept coming across these same websites when I put in plant this, not that, replacing non-natives with native plants. And the reason is because they have their own little section entitled Plant This, Not That. Direct Native Plants right over here. They are a big nursery in Maryland, and they have a lot of good information there. Plant This, Not That. Then the National Wildlife Federation, Garden for Wildlife, they've got a Plant This, Not That. You can put in your zip code, and they'll send you a list of native plants that you can put in your yard. Now, this Florida Invasive Species Council, that's where I got this. And the Georgia Invasive Species Council, they're working on their own Plant This, Not That. Okay? The North American Land Trust has got a Plant This, Not That. Wild Ones also. Oh, and Wild Ones has a sample landscaping plans. Georgia Native Plant Gardening, I belong to that group. You can go on there and ask a question, and you'll get all kinds of people answering. When you say, what should I plant instead of, you'll get a bunch of answers. All right, coming up on your assignment. Not yet. Aren't these yards pretty? What can I replace these exotics with? I don't think there's a native plant anywhere in there. Boxwoods, English ivy, liriope, Japanese maple. I don't think they're invasive. I might be wrong. Hosta. We know the English ivy is invasive. A lot of states are banning their sale. Hostas, begonias, the Asiatic jasmine. I'm assuming that's the Confederate jasmine. This is a little encouragement here that says join your native plant society or your wild ones chapter. Pollinator friendly yards on Facebook. All right, y'all ready? Got your pencil and paper? Okay. You will need your phone. It's a good little computer. A tablet, if you've got an extra tablet there, an extra computer, because everybody's got two computers in front of them. Do your own research. In other words, Google it. Y'all do the work. I have worked and worked and worked on this. And I think you'll appreciate how much I've worked when you get on online and start looking for something to replace. But this is what you do. This is all you have to do. What native to plant instead of? And then you put the non-native exotic down, and you'll get answers from AI. I just skipped that part, but and I go down and see what pops up. And I think there's some other search engines I should be using too. All right, here's your assignment. Y'all ready? All two of you. Now you don't have to do all 10 of these non-native exotics. Um, these things are still being sold in Lowe's and other big box stores, but I just want you to look up 5. So if your age is an odd number, I would ask you to do 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And if your ages are even, then you can do 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. If you're watching this recording, I would suggest that you pause it. And those of you who are live can jot down a few of these. I'm saying we're not going to do the chat option. That was a decision made that we wouldn't do this time. If you have any questions, raise your hand. I'm just kidding. This is where, as a teacher, I would walk around the room and see what the students were doing. So I'm going to pretend I'm walking around the room, and you can pretend you're working. Y'all ready? All right. What did you get for Nandina? Gallberry, hobblebush, sweetspire, blueberry. I used gallberry. I put that in my yard. One reason you don't want to plant Nandina, and I've planted it, I've shared it, and my husband has dug it out because the berries are fatal to migratory birds that come through and gobble all these berries down. It will kill them. So Nandina, and they say, well, we've got sterile Nandina now. Well, don't buy Nandina at all. Anyway, butterfly bush, the Buddleia, bottlebrush buckeye, that is so pretty. Summer sweet and ironweed. I don't know why they suggested ironweed. I guess I have to take a better look at that. Ellie Agnes, ugly Agnes, two kinds. Pungens is, they suggested dog hobble, which I have. Florida anise, viburnum, or sumac. I wonder if sumac would do good for Nandina. All right, liriope, blue-eyed grass, of course. Native sedges, I have found some native clumping sedges that I'm going to be getting. And side oaks grama, side oaks grama. That is such a pretty little plant. Ajuga, how many of you have ajuga? Well, I replaced my ajuga with green and gold. It doesn't have purple flowers like lyre-leaf sage does. Ragwort is a good ground cover. A lot of people using that, and heuchera. All right, crepe myrtle. What are we going to replace our crepe myrtle with? Just don't plant it in the first place. Fringe tree, redbud, serviceberry, and dogwood. Folks, I've got 2 great big crepe myrtles in my yard, and here I'm telling you not to plant them. I've got them in my yard. All right, autumn fern. Yeah, that's not a good one. But you know what is? Cinnamon fern. It is so pretty, and it's really a good replacement for the autumn fern. Christmas fern and maidenhair fern, really anything. Ligustrum, 2 kinds of ligustrum. This should have indicated that it was the Chinese ligustrum, but chokeberry, Carolina laurel cherry, cherry laurel, and Florida privet. I've got to look up Florida privet and do some more research on that and see if it's native to South Georgia. Periwinkle, that vinca, phlox is an excellent replacement for that. Coral bells, foam flower, which is tiarella, Allegheny spurge, and then English ivy. Virginia creeper. If Virginia creeper is grown in the sun, it's a pretty vine. I mean, it's as thick as the English ivy. Um, Crossvine, ragwort, and then I put anything. Anything is better than English ivy. All right. Here's a something else I want to talk to you about. Some things are easy. When you Google it, you'll come up with the just the right thing in 5 minutes. But there's still some things that you need to do. You need to use your devices when you go shopping. Check the scientific name. I have made this mistake. I know other people have told me they've made the mistake of thinking that something was native when it wasn't because it had a similar name. Um, of course, if it's a Japanese maple, you know it's not native to South Georgia, but get the Florida maple instead. There are alternatives to the wisteria. Oh, by the way, sinensis and chinensis indicates it's from China. So that's a big red flag there. And then Spirea japonica. We've got a Spirea, and of course the japonica is from Japan. I know one time I bought a Pyrrhus thinking that it was a native plant. It's not. It's gone. All right, so what do you do? This is the part that what can you do? And I'm going to tell you what you can do based on what I've done. First of all, a little bit at a time. Um, this liriope right here, man, I have dug that up and planted it and shared it. And now this time my neighbors wanted it. I said, no, you can't have it. So, and the mondo grass, I didn't let them have that either. But the liriope you see right here, what did I replace liriope with? That says blue-eyed grass. So right up here, there's some blue-eyed grass in there. Of course, there's daylilies too, folks. I'm not a purist. I do have some daylilies because they're sentimental, and I've got Chinese dogwood. It's sentimental. So I'm not going to tell you that you've got to replace everything and that you've got to replace everything right now. All right, so what did I do here? Well, this was not a little bit at a time, sorry. This was kind of a lot at a time. We took out 100 feet of Confederate jasmine. It was planted on the fence before we bought the house, and it's a mess. It is not a fun plant to deal with, to trim. It's a mess. And so I thought, well, I'm going to plant it with something that the native uh, bugs and birds can use. And so I cut it back, and then my husband dug it out instead. We just dug the roots up, and we put in Carolina jessamine and coral honeysuckle all along this fence. And you can see this was taken the other day, and it's just ablaze with the yellow flowers, and it has a good smell to it. You'll also notice that I reduced the lawn a little bit here by just making all of this natural. These are pecan leaves that I will use in my vegetable garden, and I've already used it. We just blow all the leaves over here to the side, and then I'll use them in my garden. Let's see. Yeah, I did tell you that I do have some things that are not native, but I don't have any Confederate jasmine. All right, finally. Yay. Okay, several years ago, soon after we moved in the house and I had started becoming um, knowledgeable in all things native plants, and also listening to people like Doug Tallamy saying to reduce the lawn. And so I had this idea in my mind. And if you look at this one over here, this photo of my front yard, what I did was I did some coloring and had decided that I was going to take the trees down, but not all the way out. And I'll explain that. to you as well. And we decided not to take them all the way down. Dead trees are a smorgasbord for birds. They it just harbors so many things that they like to eat and need to eat. So instead of leaving it at these snags that tall and short, we just left them both about 10 or 15 feet. What I did was I called a fellow who cuts down trees, tree surgeon, and Elite Trees, and I said, "Do you know what a snag is?" And he did. And I said, "You're hired," because snags are very important things. And so then my neighbors were saying, "Why are you not cutting those all the way down? You're going to have termites. We're going to have termites." Oh gosh, you get your house treated for termites. So um, anyway, so I put in a longleaf pine right here, and it was in the bottle brush stage. It was so cute. And you see it had grown some there. I didn't do this overnight. My husband came in after my shoulder surgery, and he killed all this grass that was in here. We put down cardboard, and then we put in some other things, the longleaf pine. So let's take a look over here on this side. You see these snags? They're holding up coral honeysuckle that the hummingbirds just, I mean, it's so much fun to watch the hummingbirds on that coral honeysuckle. Um, in this bed, you see the little man's face? There is a black tupelo and a bald cypress. There is the Rudbeckia, black-eyed Susan. I've got a serviceberry. There is a Hypericum St. John's wort and Kunti. And I've got a sourwood over there. I know. Probably a little out of its range, but I mean, the sourwood is so pretty. I'm not a purist. All right, a couple more things. I'll hurry up. What do I, what would I suggest that you do? What I do is I advocate, I educate, and I demonstrate. I demonstrate with my yard and the pollinator gardens that I put in, that I help to put in. I educate myself by getting the certificate in native plants through that program with the State Botanical Garden of Georgia. I go to conferences. We're having one March the 25th that if you don't know about, you surely want to check into it, look at what we're going to be covering. So advocate, educate, demonstrate. Let's make the world a little bit better by doing all that. And I want to tell you one more thing, and I know that my time's running out. Okay. Invasive non-native plants are a problem, not just in South Georgia or the United States, but all over the world. This was a good little graphic I found from the Encyclopedia Britannica that shows what is called the Columbian Exchange. Think 1492. After that, and I know Marco Polo brought oranges and noodles from China to Italy, but after 1492, it got full speed ahead, and people were not just bringing things, but they were wanting, like people in Europe were wanting Mr. Bartram to bring plants from the New World to plant in their gardens. So this has been happening for, for hundreds of years. And it's called the Columbian Exchange, and it's not just plants, it's all kinds of animals and diseases and all kinds of stuff. All right. I told you that Europe is experiencing the same invasive non-native plants. This is ragweed. It's a problem in Europe. So it's like a little na maybe. Ragweed has adapted very nicely to Europe. So like I said, it's something that everybody's got to deal with. And I think a lot of people are jumping on board. So your homework assignment is to send me a photo of you replacing a non-native invasive plant with a native one. And you can tell me what the non-native was and what the native is, what you're replacing it with. And I've got my email address right